Awesome. Hey everybody, I'm really excited today here at IAGLR, the International Association of Great Lakes Researchers, and we're here today to talk about my poster. So what we were doing here in collaboration with Black Swan Bird Observatory and New Jersey Audubon is trying to better understand what's going on with the spring migration of rails. And if you don't know what rails are, they're a group of secretive wetland birds. There's kind of this little trio of them down here. So we're dealing with the king rail, which is a state endangered species in Ohio, and then Virginia rail and sora, which are migratory water birds, and they are actually game species in the state of Ohio. So we've kind of got both ends of the spectrum. So this is mostly a descriptive poster, kind of looking at the natural history of these birds. They're very poorly understood across their range, but especially during migration. And so one of our big goals was to see, does citizen science data really well capture the initiation of migration? So when we're talking about wetland management, we want to make sure that the timing of that management is appropriate to when the birds are actually arriving. And so if citizen scientists are missing the start of migration, and then we base our management off of that, we might not meet these birds' needs. So what we did was we took advantage of several different data sets. So these purple dots on this graph here are our data from our trapping efforts. So we use standardized traps with a broadcast call, which allows us to kind of take advantage of their natural kind of sneakiness, but by using the call, they'll come into the trap, which helps a lot. We also have eBird data, which is a citizen science database. Birders can go out, see birds, submit a checklist, and then we can use that data. And then we also have 3 sources from the literature that are quite a bit older. They're from the 70s, the 60s, and the 20s. So these dots here represent kind of anecdotal data, things that have just been observed and written down, which are really useful, but weren't collected in any kind of standardized way. And so kind of one of the first big takeaways is for king rail. For king rail, we only have 5 birds, which is a very small sample size. Again, state endangered species. So there's not a whole lot we can say there other than the birds that we caught were at the end of April. Sora and Virginia rail, we're dealing with around 1,000 birds, so we can say quite a bit more with that. And so with both of them, the anecdotal data, so the stuff from the literature is kind of all over the place, but it's also quite a bit older, so it's not totally unexpected. There's a lot of things going on in this system. But the one interesting thing is, so these dark green dots represent our citizen science data, and for both species, the purple dots are earlier than the green dot. So our standardized trapping methods are detecting birds when they're first arriving in spring migration, whereas citizen scientists aren't seeing them until a little later, probably when their densities are a little bit higher. This is in no way trying to be down on citizen science. Citizen science is of course really powerful and really useful, but when we're dealing with birds that are really secretive and spend a lot of time in dense vegetation, not flying or vocalizing, we need to make sure that we're using the right tools to answer questions. So this is, very descriptive, just kind of looking at when they migrate, and then because we have this information, now we can start asking, experimental questions about how do we manage for those wetlands, what time are they needed, what do they like versus other species of birds. So yeah, that's the quick and dirty of it.
Sweet. So, can you tell us what are the different species of rails that we have here in the U.S.?
Yeah. So there's, depending on how you define rail, I'm going to define it broadly as everything in the family Rallidae. We have a pretty wide variety of species. The one that people are most likely to have seen is an American coot, which is technically a rail. We also have gallinules, common and purple gallinules. We have king rails, soras, and Virginias, which are covered in this study. There's also yellow and black rails, which are smaller and even more secretive. And then if you spend time, on the coast, you'll also run into clapper rails, which are very, very similar to king rails in size and in appearance, but they're typically in saltwater wetlands.
So with rails, and you're saying you're finding them around the Great Lakes, where else can you find them? Are they through all the lower 48? Do you find them up in Alaska and Hawaii? Where else do you find them around here?
Yeah, so you can find rails most places. There are rails all across the lower 48. There are different kinds of rails in Hawaii, and there's a chance that rails occasionally make it up into Alaska, but the Arctic kind of areas are one of the few places on Earth that we don't have a lot of rails. But sora and Virginia rail are very widely distributed across the continent. King rails are declining severely. That's why they're state endangered in Ohio. So they probably were more widely distributed previously, but now you largely will see them kind of around the Great Lakes or on the Gulf Coast. And then clapper rails are very widely distributed, but they're mostly on saltwater coasts. But where you do find them, you'll find quite a few of them.
All right. Well, thank you. Anything else you got that you?
I don't think so.
Fun stuff.
Thanks for tuning in.